Excited to have Paul Bock with us on the Christian Coach Podcast. How are you, Paul?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Had a great Easter, ready to go.
Awesome. I did as well. As we were talking off air a little bit about Easter as we're coming out of the Easter season. So trust all our listeners had a great Easter as well. Paul's with Score International. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but thank you, Paul, for taking the time to join us. And listeners, we're excited for you to be part of our podcast today, where we remind you that we are serving coaches through conversation so they can lead like Jesus. Paul, our power question is this, and we like to ask our guest in our opening kind of segment here. What does it mean to you to be a Christian coach?
That's a great question. And in thinking about it a little bit, it just allows me to use godly principles in every aspect of coaching. As I work with these young men, I mostly work with boys teams. I just try to help empower them to do the best they can individually, and also for them to understand what it means to be. Wants us to have a unity with him and with other Christians, and that's kind of what I'm trying to empower in each one of these young men that I have an opportunity to coach.
I love it. I love how you use the word empower. And just the analogy that brings into as the role as a Christian coach. So I appreciate that. Paul, educate our listeners a little bit. Tell us about Score International, what its vision, what its mission is, what you guys are all about, and then maybe the role that you have within the organization.
Yeah, fantastic. SCORE is an acronym for Sharing Christ, Our Redeemer Enterprise. It's a big, long name. Basically, our mission statement is to glorify God through missions in obedience to the Great Commission, which just thrills me to be able to wake up every day and be able to do that. You know, as far as our vision, it's to give every man, woman, and child where the ministry serves multiple opportunities to hear, see, and respond to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I don't know if there's anything more important. I love to use sports as a platform to be able to share Christ everywhere we go. So we try to engage people in missions with a commitment to excellence. We try to equip and empower others to understand and steward their giftedness. So we want to use their gifts that they have and let them understand that whatever gifts they have, you can use those for God. So we've had some interesting conversation when it comes for that. We definitely want to express the gospel everywhere we go.
And what do you do specifically? What is your role or title within the ministry?
Yeah, so now they gave me a fancy title, Missions Engagement Specialist.
Ooh, I like that.
You like that? And try to mobilize teams, mobilize individuals. So we take sports teams of all kinds, basketball, football, soccer. My heart's with basketball. It always has been. We take church groups, we take college groups, we take family groups. So anyone who's interested in using their talents on a mission trip to share the gospel, we're ready to take them.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thanks for sharing about the history, the vision. SCORE is a special ministry to me as well. And a little bit later in the podcast, we'll talk more. Paul, maybe you can share, as I said, a little bit later, if any of our coaches want to learn more about, getting involved or taking a specific trip. But here's what we've done. February, my co-hosts and we decided to take the theme of relationships in February. And so we talked about marriages and relationships. In March, of course, our theme was basketball, going with March Madness. Just this past month, April, we did some time management, rhythm, routines for our coaches. So May, we wanted to designate this month to missions. And it's just a theme that comes up in conversations with our guests, getting teams involved in missions. So when I was thinking about someone who I could interview or have part of the show, Paul, you came to mind. First person came to mind as I met you just a few months ago, actually, and we spent some time in Panama. And I got to clarify, because I'm down here in South Florida, it was not Panama City, it was the country of Panama. So just amazing memories, amazing highlight, just a great trip. So I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. But let me ask you this, Paul. Share a little bit about, growing up. What was it like being a young Paul, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, where you grew up, siblings, parents, what was going on?
Yeah, so I was born in Syracuse, New York. Um, I hate to admit it, but I'm a Yankee by birth. I lived there for a couple years, and then we moved several spots. We moved to Palatine, Illinois, just outside Chicago. My mom and her family's from Chicago area. Then we moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and went to Peoria, Illinois, and then it ended up here in Western West Virginia. And I've been here since 1981, so I kind of consider it home. Started high school here, and it's a great place to raise a family, so we just decided to stick around.
Nice. So you got that Northeast kind of New York, West Virginia. I'm originally from Pittsburgh. I always tell people it's a great place to be from.
Yeah.
I love that area. I love growing up there, but I'm enjoying South Florida. Well, it's obvious, Paul, sports and athletics have been part of your life, and just knowing a little bit about you, how God just lined up those passions, that purpose for you serving with SCORE. So talk a little bit about, sports and athletics. You mentioned, the Yankees growing up in, kind of sports country there a little bit. Tell us about some of the teams you enjoyed, sports you played, maybe even lessons that athletics has taught you.
Yeah, since we lived out in the Chicago area, I'm kind of a Bears fan, a Cubs fan, especially a Cubs fan because my grandmother lived about 6 blocks from Wrigley Field. So we always wanted to go visit grandma in the summer because we knew we were going to take the trolley over, watch Cubs games. So that's kind of where, Blackhawks are. That's kind of where my heart. Now living in West Virginia, we do not have a pro team in the state. A lot of people like the Pirates and like the Steelers. So I know that goes to your heart.
That
does. A lot
of
others like the Cincinnati Reds. So that's kind of where we sit. It takes us about 2-3 hours to get to Great American Stadium. So,
okay. Did you play any sports growing up in high school or middle school?
I played about them all. I
Yeah.
started Little League and baseball. I realized that wasn't going to be a good career choice, so I kind of grew in to basketball, and then I played some football in high school. And my heart was really always with basketball, even though I've got a football body. Played some rugby after my college.
Rugby.
Yeah, played some rugby. Really
Nice.
enjoyed it. I had some anger issues back in the up, and I really enjoyed it so much. They talked me into playing in an adult league, so I did that for a while. Played some indoor soccer, which I still think that is too much like hockey, so they didn't like it when I was putting guys into the boards.
Nice.
So I sat out a lot.
Nice. Well, kudos to respect with rugby, man. That is a violent sport, and it seems like you were in the right spot, man, especially if you had some anger issues, man. So now you mentioned all these teams from Chicago. I didn't hear the Bulls. That was my
definitely the Bulls were in there. You got to love the Bulls. For some reason, I really enjoyed the Lakers back in the Magic era.
Yeah.
And now lately, I've been a huge Spurs fan. Yeah, I love Popovich. I love the organization. I love their standards that they have and that they implement in every player. And a better player, once you've been in that organization.
Yeah. I gotcha. Well, let me ask you this, Paul. As a former athlete growing up in middle school, high school, what's 1 or 2 lessons that athletics have taught you? And I love hearing these answers because it's obvious, you know, a lot of our coaches are former athletes, and these lessons we've learned, they relate so well to the spiritual life. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Oh,
So what are
most
some
definitely.
lessons?
For me, you know, I grew up played sports mostly in the 80s, early 90s, and back then dedication was everything.
Mm.
And so that was instilled in me in my home life with my dad. He instilled that, and the coaches I had, you know, just being dedicated to yourself, being dedicated to God, be dedicated with the work ethic that you're going to put into it every day. You're not going to take a day off. There's no day offs back then. I mean, you're going to hammer it hard every day, give everything you have. So that one really kind of stuck with me. It stuck with my life today. I had been an outside sales rep for 30 years before coming into full-time ministry, and that just kind of stuck with me. It stuck with me in coaching. So that's just kind of part of my lifestyle. You know, go hard. You know, don't take a day off.
Yeah. I like that dedication. And as the athlete who finds themselves successful, of course, talent always plays in, but man, the ones who are dedicated to their craft, and then as a Christian, as a believer, someone who's walking this life, we need to be dedicated to Christ and His Word. So it's awesome how those lessons just go hand in hand. Let me ask you this, Paul. You mentioned your dad, probably some coaches, but who are some mentors or role models you had in your life, you have in your life, and maybe a lesson or two that they've taught you?
Yeah, the first Baptist church that we were involved with, there was a youth pastor or an assistant pastor, I'm sorry. And he asked me one day, we just started going, and he asked me to be a part of the bus ministry. And he had to explain what it was because I wasn't familiar with bus ministry from where I came from. And so he explained it, and I started going with him. And probably the second time out, he stopped the bus in the middle of the main thoroughfare in Huntington. He just asked me if I had ever accepted Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And after, you know, several months of going back and trying to figure out what I believe, I realized I hadn't. So
Yeah.
he was by far my biggest mentor starting out, because then on the first mission trip in 1999 with SCORE to the Dominican Republic to play basketball, just a bunch of guys from our church that went, and I got called to children's ministry and youth ministry, and he taught me everything I knew about children's ministry and church camp. So he was been a huge part of my life, college and career for over 20 years now. And just because listening to the calling of God and having him being able to be my side and mentor me. And then two guys that I can't thank enough for their just lifestyle, because I don't know that I've seen two guys that are more interested and more dedicated to sharing the gospel than Mickey Bain and Aaron Carr. Mickey had been a pastor for years. I had known him growing up in the same church, had his kids in children's church. And then he was a pastor and was SCORE doing short-term missions domestically for a while till he passed away last year with colon cancer. So I hated that, because he taught me what it looked like to have a thirst, a longing, an urging to be daily. And Aaron Carr was the same way. He used to be our small group leader in our young married couples class. And he, to this day, just encourages me to watch him just evangelize on a daily basis.
Man, that's cool. I appreciate you sharing that with those role models and mentioning influential men. And now we're, you know, similar ages, and now we see that kind of a baton passed on to us. And I seen that in you, and I just want to compliment you as we were on that trip down in Panama, and Carter was a player, maybe 19 years old, if I'm correct. And I just saw that role model mentorship in his life. So I just enjoyed kind of watching that. Again, we're with Paul Bock. He is with Score International, taking the time to just share a little bit about some lessons he's learned. And we're going to get into the ministry with Score and the missions trips. And I'm going to share a quick story, Paul. As we went down to Panama just, less than 6 months ago. It's probably October. Was that when we went to Panama?
I think we went into July.
End of July. Please forgive me, man. What's time? You get old, you just forget, you know. Okay, so end of July. I was way off on that. So we're in Panama, and we had the theme as we partnered up with Nations of Coaches. We had some of our coaches come, and we bought some shirts that said "Be Great, Serve," and that was kind of our theme. And so for any of the listeners that know me and my family, let's just say motion sickness is not my cup of tea. Paul knows where I'm going with this. So
I wasn't going to bring it up.
Yeah, I said I might as well bring it up, right? So if Pete's listening, if Mike's listening, any of those guys, they're enjoying this. But we got up about 5 a.m. and we had to travel about 3 hours, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
It was about 3 hours to this kind of camp, this school. And let's just say these roads were not paved, smooth I-95 here in South Florida. So we're going up and down around potholes, and we're in this van. And I was good for the first 2 hours. And then eventually, let's just say my motion sickness got the best of me, and it was an ugly mess. And as we finally made it to the camp, here's Paul, my hero, Be Great, Serve. He is cleaning out that van and cleaning out that mess there. And so when I think about serve, Paul, that comes to mind there a little bit. So let me ask you this, and I know our connection's going a little bit on and off there, and I hope you're still with me, Paul. But when a coach is interested in being involved, when a coach is interested in being involved in missions or getting involved with Score, what would be the process? What advice would you give them? Kind of walk them through the high school coach that might want to take a trip with his team, with his family. How does that look like?
What we do is we'd encourage you just to put a team together who's interested in going and playing the sport that God has gifted you with. And in doing that, we can, mostly we take you overseas. We could do it here in the U.S. as well. I love the overseas experience because it gives the players and coaches a different perspective, maybe about their global viewpoint of what they have currently. And most global viewpoints are about what they have in their surroundings, in their local community. And so I love to get them out of the comfort zone. I love to get them out and show them, because everywhere we go, they will realize how well they have it here in the U.S.
Yeah.
That's something, no matter where you go, you'll be thankful for the food you have. You'll be thankful for the shelter and clothing that you're able to have. And then, not only playing the sport, we share the gospel every time we do a players clinic. If we play a game, there's always an opportunity for us to share the gospel. Just a downtown Panama City, which I thought I'd seen poor here in West Virginia, but I haven't seen till you see what poor looks like over there. So I was just, when our missionary, David Bueno, we pulled up in the van, he said, "Don't get out of the van." It underpasses, and he rolled his window down and he called people by name.
Wow.
Before we go down some streets that, hey, and he'd call out.
I know our connection's going in and out, so we're getting bits and pieces of this, but I know two things that you mentioned on these trips is getting these kids and coaches out of their comfort zone. So I
Yeah.
think that is really crucial. And then two, just coming back with just more of a thankful heart, a thankful spirit and gratitude. And I know that's what happened to me. And you mentioned your first trip was to the DR in 99. My first trip was actually with Score International as well in 1999 as I went to Budapest, Hungary. And
Wow.
then in 2000, had the opportunity to go to Argentina, took a team to Barcelona, Spain, and then, of course, with you in July to Panama. So incredible lessons. Let me ask you this. When a player, a coach, a family comes back from a trip, what are they echoing? What are they sharing? What are they talking about as they have experienced maybe 5, 6, 7, up to 10 days being in another country? What are they sharing or talking about?
Yeah, they're just on fire for God at that point, because this is a mountaintop high. And I've led groups, and the first group I led was a youth group from my church. And I made a mistake. I've made them all, and I learned from it. But the mistake I made, these kids came back and these parents came back and they were on fire. And they say, okay, what do we do now? And I'm like, I was not ready. I didn't have anything planned. I was not ready. Okay, what's the next step? So I'd encourage everybody, yes, preparation for the trips are important. The trips are extremely important, but you've got to be prepared when you get back to have them something ready for them to do, because they're going to be on fire, guarantee. I've never seen a group that hasn't been. So I usually set something up locally in their communities and make sure they get something set up to, if it's hanging out with assisted living residents and hugging on them for a while, because we forget about our elderly sometimes, or if it's just going out and handing out some food, or just, doing a local, sports outreach.
Yeah.
Just have something planned and ready to go.
I love that you hit on that, because it reminds me kind of just as a teenager, the summer Christian camp high, and we're away, maybe even uncomfortable. And then we come back and it's like, now what? So
yeah,
it's good to have these coaches be thinking about, follow up, stay connected. What else can we do? How can we, like you said, that fire, keep it burning, right? And just keep that passion going. That's incredible to hear. I love what you're doing. I love what Score's all about. Share with us this, Paul, because I took notice. You said you were with an outside rep, working probably almost 30 years. And you use the terminology call, and there's no doubt this is a calling on your life to be involved in Score. How did that look like, or what did God impress upon you to now make that transition and be involved full time with Score as this athletics missionary, basically?
Yeah, so I've gotten called a couple times in life, so I'm kind of familiar. That first time in '99, the DR, I was definitely the oldest one on the trip. And there was a young man who was 15, could have been my son, because I was 30 years old at the point when we went. And I overheard him talking to his parents about what I meant to him on the trip, and just broke down in tears listening to talk to his parents. And I never would have thought that God could have used me in really any regards, because the basketball trip, we weren't very good. It was just a bunch of guys from our church, but we just wanted to go serve the Lord and gather some people. But I never thought I could do probably any more than that. And for God to say, nope, I want you to come and do children's ministry and youth ministry. And I listened clearly on that trip to his calling. And I think it took him to put me on that trip and get me away from the daily grind, slow me down enough to actually listen to him.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in church my whole life. I understood what he wanted us to do, and I tried to be good and do all that stuff, but I just wasn't listening. And so for him to slow me down enough to put me in an atmosphere that I was going to listen was amazing. And then just fulfill what he called me to do then. And then, I pray every year, at least once or twice, is this where you want me, God? If you want me to go somewhere else, just tell me, move me, and I'll do it. So of course I've moved from children's ministry to youth ministry, and the last 8 years, college and career ministry. I think with that, I might have prayed every month. God, are you sure you don't want to move me somewhere else? That might have been the hardest. They're growing up and they're trying to figure out, spreading their wings and figure out where they are in life. So a lot of times dedication wasn't in their bag to come to youth group or small group. And then it was interesting because Trey was on that first basketball trip to the Dominican. Trey Bailey with Score International, been with Score over 20 years now. And that was one of the callings that God impressed upon him when we went on that trip. So he's been a mentor. I probably should have mentioned him before. He's been a mentor of mine. He's taught me how to lead mission trips, and I've led several over the years. And he sent me an email on a Friday night in February 2021. And he's done this before. He said, hey, you've got a huge network of people that you know. I've got a couple needs. We're going to restart our gap year program called Climb, and I need a U.S. director and I need a Dominican director. And so as I printed those off, I'll never forget it. I read the first one as the U.S. director, and I'm like, man, that sounds just like me.
Yeah.
And so it scared me a little bit. I prayed that Friday night. My wife gets up Saturday morning, and I said, hey, Trey sent me something I just thought was interesting. So I shared it with her, and she read it. And wouldn't you know, she looks at me and she goes, that sounds just like you. And so, we prayed about it. And, Sunday, it was pretty clear that this is the direction God wanted us to go. So we called Trey, told him we were interested, went through the process, and, came on with Score in April of 2021. And then, Scott Cannon, executive director, wanted to make some changes to the program. So he called a timeout. And as they're trying to make changes and figure out where that's going to go, they wanted me to stay on board and lead mission trips. So that's why I'm, continuing to mobilize people. And I was doing that I could ever go on. So I kind of hold on with both hands and let God take the wheel and lead it. And I just hold on.
Well, I love just hearing the story, the journey, and the calling. It's obvious God had a plan for your life. He implanted that talent, that gift, and even using sports and athletics, using your wife for some affirmation. I like how you said it scared you a little bit. And I think all the time, when God has something, a little bit bigger than we thought, it should scare us, because that's God's will. Because if it didn't scare us, we'd be so comfortable, we'd do it in our own strength. And this is when we need to rely on God to do that. Do this, Paul, as we're getting ready to kind of finish up. It's been a great conversation again with Paul Bock. He's with Score International. For the coach who's listening, whether it's a young coach, middle-aged coach, just real quick, give us this maybe 1 minute, 30-second commercial for better word, of the pros, maybe the cons, but more the pros of getting involved in a mission trip in your team. What would you say now as we get ready to wrap it up? Your one last appeal to the coach who's thinking about doing this.
Yeah, you can't make a mistake with this. I know people worried about, especially coaches, am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right moves? And taking a team on a mission trip, you just can't go wrong. Yeah. And I tell them to stay flexible, because there's always change involved in ministry and in missions. And if they go in with a mindset to stay flexible, then they're going to do a lot better off, just because schedule is going to change. Most of Central American countries that I've been to don't adhere to time or schedule very well. Yeah. They're going to get there when they get there. Yep. And so I try to remind them all just to stay flexible, but you really can't go wrong. It's going to be it might be the biggest impact you've made on your team in a while as well. So they're going to see some things they've never seen before. They're going to play against some competition they probably not played against before. So it's just going to be a positive influence on them as individuals. They'll understand what they have, should be grateful for what they have, them as a team, to be able to work together in a different environment. Because once you go on a mission trip for a week, you're going to get to know people a lot better than you knew them back here in the U.S.
So true. And I echo everything you're saying, Coach. If you're debating this, thinking about this, educate yourself. There's going to be some planning. There's finding the right time, the resources, the money. But as I think of past experience, if this is what God's planted on your heart to use this universal language, sports is a universal language, and be able to go to a different country and use the platform of basketball, soccer, football, whatever it may be, look into it, and God will make those funds and resources available. And I've seen it in my life, and it is life-changing. And Paul, I have former players come back who went on a trip to Spain with me. We talk about that trip. We don't always talk about, the games or the districts or the homecoming. It comes up, but we talk about the trip and incredible memories. So I appreciate you taking the time to share with us. And here's what I'm going to do as we close out, Paul. Okay. This is called my rapid fire. There's no script to it. It's just the first thing that comes to your mind. It's some of your favorite food or favorite color. So it's going to be really fast. And so I got 10 questions. All right. Are you ready? I'm going to time.
I'm ready. Let's go. Come on, let's go.
You got a minute, buddy. Here we go. Number one, your favorite junk food.
Pastries.
Pastries. All right. Your favorite restaurant.
Oh, that's a good question. We don't go out a whole lot. Probably Oscars.
Okay. Favorite sport to play.
Basketball.
I knew it.
Come on now.
Favorite sport to watch.
Basketball.
Yes. Sports car or truck? What would you rather?
Oh, truck. Come on now. I'm in West Virginia.
Virginia. You gotta got a four-wheel.
Not live in the state and not have a truck.
All right. I know you're married. You and your wife, Sue. You want a beach house or a cabin in the woods?
Oh, cabin in the woods for me. She'd want a beach house. I want a cabin in the woods.
All right. Number 7, your favorite ice cream.
Chocolate fudge.
Nice. All right. You can go anywhere in the country. This is vacation, not a mission trip. Okay. You're taking your family.
What is that?
2 weeks paid vacation. Where are you going? Anywhere in the country.
We're probably going to go to Colorado or somewhere out west because I've never been.
Okay. All right. He's going to stay in the USA. All right. Last 2, Paul. Favorite Bible verse?
Oh, it's got to be Romans 10:9 through 13.
Okay. And favorite Bible character?
Probably for me, it's Peter because I'm way too much like him.
Yes. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Man, Paul, this has been amazing. Thanks for taking the time to join us. As we always close, we just have a word of prayer. And so do you have anything specific I can pray for?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat you are. We've talked about this before. We're still support raising.
Mm-hmm.
So as you know how challenging that is, especially coming out of COVID and, the talks of financial instability right now in the country. It's just tough. So pray for that and pray for me to continue to follow God's leading.
I'll do it. Man, let's do it. Let's pray, Paul. God, we pause. We thank you for Paul, for his ministry, for the calling you have on his life. Thank you for him taking the time to share and be part of the podcast, the lessons he's learned, and just the encouragement of what missions means to him, of what missions means to you. You give in each and every one of us gifts and talents, and a lot of our coaches listening, it's the platform of sports, maybe basketball, but could be different sports, tennis, golf, that we can use these gifts and talents for you to ultimately see people come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. Thank you for Paul, his ministry, and Lord, as he mentioned, just the support and the partnership, raising funds, what a challenge that is sometimes, but we know that we can trust in you. So continue to keep him connected to you, close to you as he serves you within SCORE. Thank you for who you are and what you do. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.